believe it to be useful to themselves and to their community and to the NHS. For 4 years, they've run towards the light at the end of that tunnel, that foundation year that would allow them to become a pharmacist. And then, as they approach it, they are told, actually, that light has moved. It might not be there, and we don't know when you can have it or where you can get it, but it won't be in Scotland. This is unacceptable. Today, I move motion 37. I call on you to urge the Scottish government to restore adequate training positions for our students and help protect patient care and safeguard the future of pharmacy in Scotland. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. I now call on the seconder for the motion. Seconder for the motion. Thank you. I now call on any supporting or opposing speakers in the debate. That was motion 37, addressing the shortage of training places in pharmacy students. Please note the General Council recommends support. I'll now take you to the vote. Can I see all those in favour please show? Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Motion 37, addressing the shortage of training places in for pharmacy students, is carried. Congress, we will now take the video message address from the Cuban ambassador this afternoon. That's so that the First Secretary of the Cuban Embassy, Pablo, can join us in person. Unfortunately, he's been held up by public transport, this morning, so we'll now take that video this afternoon. Thank you, Congress. I call on Composite C, rebuilding our public services, covering amended motions 4, 39 and motion 4 and motion 50. Can I invite the General Secretary of Unison, Christina McAnee, to move the composite motion? Thank you.
Thank you, President. Christina McAnee, General Secretary of Unison, moving composite C. Congress, this motion is pretty simple. The people of Scotland deserve good services, good public services. And the stats in this motion, if you're reading it, are shocking. But behind every single one of them is a real person. A loved one suffering longer than needed because they're waiting so long for treatment. A parent dying because of a misdiagnosis. A child going hungry because of poverty. Or a single parent unable to work because of childcare costs. And both the SNP in Holyrood and Labour in Westminster talk about the need to grow the economy. Well, investing in public services and the workers who provide them will do that. Investing in infrastructure, building social housing, improving transport, roads and our essential industries will all help grow the economy. And giving our members and the members of every single union in this hall a decent pay increase will help boost the economy. Because you know what our members do? They don't go off and think, what will I do with that increase I've just had? I'll go and buy some stocks and shares or a nice new yacht. They spend it in their local communities, buying shoes for their children in local shops, taking them to the local leisure centre. That's how you boost local economies. Because we know, we keep being told by politicians that the world has changed. And we can see that. We're not stupid. We can see the impact on energy prices. We can see what's been happening with Trump in power and the trade and tariff wars. We can see what that's doing to the local economies and our national economies. So Congress, if the world has changed, why isn't the Labour government changing its fiscal policy, a policy it imposed on itself? Let's tax those most able to afford it. Let's not take away benefits and fuel allowances from those least able to afford it. That's not how you grow the economy. That's not how you get people back into work. Bring in rules to make big multinational companies in this country pay their fair taxes. Bring in rules to tax the wealth of this nation, not just the incomes that people earn. There's a big Amazon warehouse down in Dunfermline, I'm sure you know. And when they have a fire in the warehouse, they call the local fire brigade. If one of their workers takes ill, they call an ambulance. Their vehicles run on roads maintained by local authorities. Their workers go to work because their children can go to local schools. They can get treatment in local hospitals. So why isn't Amazon paying its fair share of taxes in this country the way our members do? Both the Labour government and the SNP have tax-raising powers, so use them. Yesterday, we heard from John Swinney, so I hope he's listening to us today, because he needs to spend less time telling us what they can't do and focus more on what they can do. Turn their efforts into actually delivering things. Stop letting our essential services be hived off. Privatisation by stealth like we're seeing in Scottish Water and other essential services. Scotland cannot afford another SNP budget that boasts about having the lowest business taxes in the UK while our vital public services are going to the wall. They need to get serious about using powers to raise the money that they have. So let's make sure they listen to us today, not just us listening to them yesterday and today with the Labour leader. Make sure they're listening to us. Make sure we have a fair settlement in this country on taxes. Make sure we can boost the economy by boosting our public services, our industries and the people who work in them. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. I now call on Gus Sproul to second the composite motion on behalf of the STUC General Council. Thank you, Gus. Gus.
Not used to being in such a lofty position. Congress, Gus Sproul, FPU, seconding composite C on behalf of the General Council. Congress, every delegate in here knows only too well the impact of the last 15 years of attacks on the public sector. We know the devastating effects of decades of underfunding on our communities, and as we talked about yesterday, creating the social conditions where the far and the populist right can gain traction to push their agendas. And we've heard today from our education unions, yesterday from the transport unions, from health and industry, all painting the picture of a country that desperately needs a new approach to funding our public services. The FPU are moving a motion later on today on developing the role of a firefighter in Scotland, detailing the benefits to the communities all over the country for what amounts to a minimum level of investment. When the government, the employer and the union are all in agreement on the positive, life-saving effects of implementing an agreed proposal, but we can't make it happen because there's no money, that's a damning indictment on our current politics and our funding model. Instead of working towards making that a reality and bringing those benefits to this country right now, as we are here talking about rebuilding our public services, there's a Scottish Fire and Rescue event going on in Stirling with stakeholders being asked to score a range of options to take to public consultation this summer that include proposed station closures, changes to crewing levels and shift patterns. Whatever options go forward, it's likely that without significant investment we'll have fewer firefighters, responding on fewer fire engines from fewer fire stations in the very near future. And that's on the back of losing over 1,300 firefighters over the last decade and the loss of a further 10 appliances and 166 firefighter jobs just over the last 2 years. So like so many in this hall, we've been asked to continually do more with less, leading to more risk for our members and to you as members of the public. We all know the importance of our public services and the desperate need to rebuild them. We need the government to act now, be bold and not just listen to us and nod, but to act on what they're telling them. Please support the composite.
Thanks, Gus. Can I now call on Clydebank Trade Union Council to speak in support of the composite motion?
President, Congress, Janet Cassidy, supporting on behalf of Clydebank Trade Council. Last year, our motion on budget cuts was defeated, and would you know, cuts are back on the agenda. Many councils are setting budgets that will see service cuts at the same time as increasing council tax and charges. Authorities in England were surveyed and it found 9 out of 10 plan to raise council tax and charges for parking and environmental waste, things that we're already being charged for. Local government experts said councils had carried out all of the easy cuts years ago and were now struggling to protect vital children and adult social care services. Children must not pay the price for balancing budgets. Campaigners say the budgetary crisis in local government is also limiting the lives of millions of disabled people. Many are being plunged into hardship, isolation, distress and deepening poverty as a result. Millions of young and old are going without the care and support they need. Respite care is being removed in some areas. Ministers are expected to unveil a further £500 million in cuts, with universal credit benefits thought to be frozen until 2030. We need to protect our public services, and the strategy of managed decline is unacceptable, along with the misery and hardship that's being caused along with job losses. We call on the General Council to support local activity as part of a national campaign involving communities, trade unions and trade councils. Please support.
Thank you, Janet. I now call on Dundee Trades Union Council to speak in support of the composite motion. Mike, thank you.
President Congress, Mike Arnott, Dundee Trade Union Council, supporting the composite. First time trying to do a 2-minute speech at Congress. Since 2010, it has been calculated that £178 million has been cut from Dundee City Council's budget by austerity cuts passed on from Westminster via Holyrood. The cuts, not savings, not economies, but cuts, have decimated services in this city. Thousands of jobs have disappeared. The millions of pounds in wages that went with those jobs have been lost to the city's economy. Campaigns to save services, in which Dundee Trades Council and others have been involved, include Miller Main's Food Bank, thrown out of their base in a local sheltered housing complex by the City Council and told to use a gazebo outside. Earlier this year, we heard that Dundee Health and Social Care Partnership will be cutting £19 million from its budget this year, including cuts to home care packages, home meal services, and the closure of at least one of the city's residential elderly care homes. We also see no sign of a reversal to last round of so-called temporary cuts to our fire and rescue service. I thought austerity was over. I thought the message from the new government at Westminster and from Holyrood was that Tory austerity was a thing of the past. Why are we still suffering from what looks to me very much like continuing Tory cuts? In closing, I'd like to pay tribute to the campaign run by Margaret Hogg and the local management group, assisted by Councillor Dorothy McHugh, who 2 weeks ago overturned the proposed closure of Douglas Community Centre. A flicker of light in the gloom, a little victory which we rightly celebrate. Only yesterday, Congress warned of the role that this austerity was playing in the rise of the far right, but it also simply destroys lives and decimates our communities. Enough is enough. Support the composite.
Thank you, Mike. I now call on USDA to speak in support of the composite motion. Thank you, Delegate.
President, Congress, Elaine Dennis, supporting the motion on rebuilding our public services on behalf of my union, USDA. Congress, for over a decade, we've seen widespread sweeping cuts to public services across Scotland. While no area has been immune from austerity, it's fair to say that local government has been at the sharp end of it, facing £6 billion in cuts over the past 10 years. This has resulted in severe and lasting impacts right across Scotland. Public services are frequently the backbone of our communities, from helping to tackle child poverty and social inequality to delivering everyday services like making sure our household bins are emptied. Local authorities help to deliver on education, health, social care and transport services. but relentless cuts and rising costs have left many Scottish councils struggling to cope, struggling to balance their budget, and struggling to deliver vital local services for people across Scotland. Many councils have been left facing impossible choices between which frontline service they deliver on and what to cut. We can see this clearly with the state of the Scottish high streets and town centres, a key visual reminder of the toll cuts of the local government have taken on our communities. Across Scotland, we see places that were once community hubs looking tired and run down. We see antisocial behaviour filling the gaps where community spirit used to thrive. And we see growing levels of poverty and unemployment. But local authorities cannot invest in local economy and high streets without consistent and sustainable funding. We welcome the recent decision by the Scottish Government to address this issue, and an increase in funding is a step in the right direction. But it will take more than 1 year to boost and to rectify the problem. It is clear that the public services across Scotland are at breaking point, with hard-working people left to pick up the pieces to reduce these impacts and to support local authorities in delivering key public services. We need to start investing in our local economies, investing in our transport networks, and investing in our high streets and town centres. This will ensure that local government can help deliver the crucial public services that matter the most to people across Scotland. Please support. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. I now call on East Kilbride and South Lanarkshire Trades Union Council to speak in support of the composite motion. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, President. Congress, Bill Ramsey, South Lanarkshire Trades Council, focusing on our section of the composite, which reads, examine the feasibility and potential under existing powers of introducing levies in industries with extraordinarily high profit margins. One of those is big whisky. The SWA will tell you ad infinitum that whisky is worth between £5 and £7 billion to the Scottish economy. That accounts for 8% of annual production. £5 to £7 billion, 8% of annual production. What about the other 92%? And I've got this from an ex-DG of Customs and Excise, who used to be a PCS member in his youth. 92% of annual production leaves our shores in bottles and containers, and inland revenue and Customs and Excise get that technical economic Scottish term, hee-haw. 92% of annual production of whisky leaves without a sniff of the Treasury or Customs and Excise getting anywhere near it. It's time for us to just look at the idea. I'm not asking for anyone to impose levies or look at industrial water rates. Just let's look at the idea and think about what happens to that 92%, which is worth between 30 and 40 billion, take your pick, that leaves Scotland with no tax or revenue at all. We need to look at that, Congress. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. I now call on any supporting or opposing speakers in the debate. Come forward, Delegate.
Good morning, Congress. David Gibson, AIS, first time speaker. Colleagues, the quality of public services is fundamental to a functioning society. The rebuilding of our public services was the change promised by Keir Starmer's Labour Party as they stormed to a massive majority at Westminster last year. Change presumably and hopefully from the cruelty of an austerity-focused, foreigner-fearing, social protection-destroying Tory government. Well, that was the promise. Reality has shown us in the movement that this rebuild is not exactly a resulting priority. Still, the public spending that makes it through Westminster and Holyrood down to councils asked to provide so much in terms of vital public services leads to cuts in those services. Witness cuts in Dundee described in the composite. Cuts to the council serving or attempting to serve some of Scotland's most deprived areas. Cuts to each of Dundee's secondary schools' budgets, despite the increasing numbers and the increasing needs of Dundee's children, inevitably leading to increasing violence and aggression and increasing workload to an already stretched teacher workforce. Rebuilding public services is vital, long overdue, and requires some tough decisions. Not the type of tough decisions which are continually adversely affecting the most vulnerable in society, the type of tough decisions that might actually improve all of our lives. Conference, we call for the tough decisions to tax millionaires and billionaires. Let's tax wealth. Let's actually have meaningful change and rebuild public services and improve society for all. The current course of action is simply not change enough. Support the composite.
Thanks, Delegate. Delegate, come forward. Thank you.
Chair, Congress, Lynn Davis, Chair of Fife Trade Council. There has been a failure to deliver council homes in Scotland, and as such there's been an over-reliance in private lets, often incurring higher rental costs, pushing families further into poverty. In October 2024, 12 local authorities in Scotland declared a housing emergency, with demand outstripping supply. It's worth remembering, comrades, that every 16 minutes a household becomes homeless in Scotland. Currently, there's 10,000 children stuck in temporary accommodation, with children reporting feeling unsafe, anxious and frightened, with children witnessing violence and unable to sleep in noisy environments. One 14-year-old boy said, "I'm not going to lie, I was scared after last night's stabbing." Experiencing homelessness as a child is traumatic, resulting in a higher risk of mental health issues such as anxiety and depression. And it's imperative, comrades, that everyone who needs a safe, permanent council home has access to it. As Shelter states, it's simple. Let's build more social housing, more council housing, and let's fund it. Please support this motion.
Thank you, Delegate. Congress, that was Composite C, rebuilding our public services. Please note that the General Council recommends support. I'll now move you to the vote. Can I see all those in favour? Please show. Thank you. Any against? Thank you. Any abstentions? Thank you. Composite C, rebuilding our public services, is carried. Congress, I now call amended motion 40, the future of NHS Scotland. I now invite Unite to move the amended motion.
Stephen Lindsay, Unite the Union, first time speaker. Moving amended motion 40 on the future of NHS Scotland. Congress, we meet at a time when the NHS Scotland pay offer is being considered by our respective unions as to whether this offer is good enough for our members. In Unite, we believe that the 8% offer over 2 years is the best negotiable, but it is in our members' hands, as it always is, to make that judgment. As we know, the offer includes a clause which ensures that pay is inflation-proof. However, let me be clear, if there is any attempt to roll back and renege on this clause, then this will automatically trigger an industrial action ballot by Unite. But Congress, we know that the challenges facing NHS Scotland are not exclusively over levels of pay. In fact, getting boxed into only talking about the issue of pay, as the government often seems very keen to do, ignores the big concerns that we have over the wider working conditions and the challenges our members face on a daily basis. It ignores a bigger conversation about the levels of extra investment required to ensure we give our members the tools, the beds and the equipment that they need to do the job to the gold standard we all want delivered for the Scottish public. And that is why we need to deliver sustainable and realistic capital investment to bring our ageing equipment and infrastructure into line with modern healthcare delivery. Unfortunately, these wider issues aren't getting the attention they truly deserve, but it is our job and responsibility to make sure that they take centre stage. The Scottish Government is also disgracefully in cahoots with NHS executives unilaterally reneging on the reduction in the working week under the cloak of the current pay offer. That's unacceptable, Congress, and we will fight against this draining Peter and Paul approach, giving with one hand but refusing to give with the other, because our members are exhausted and beyond breaking point. In August of last year, Unite revealed the grim findings of a survey conducted amongst Scottish ambulance service workers: record levels of abuse, burnout and stress. The workers already bearing the brunt of an overstretched system are being asked to do more with less. We need to ensure that we raise standards and guard against any dilution in the terms and conditions of NHS workers. These are real issues because our members don't work and operate within some protected bubble. They are not immune from overwhelming pressures that they have to confront it every day. We need to ensure there is no outsourcing of NHS services and that services are also brought back in-house. We need to put an end to the slippery practice of private companies providing services using NHS staff at exorbitant costs. Congress, a health service free at the point of need is not a given, and it needs to be cherished, preserved and fought for at all costs. Central to this whole debate is how we fund our NHS and indeed our wider public sector. Unite believes that the next Scottish Government should make firm commitments to ensure that the amount spent in health will match or exceed that of Germany, which is 12.8% of GDP. If it's good enough to be talking about setting committed targets for our defence and military budget, then surely the same commitment should be made for our NHS. And Congress, this commitment should come with long-term strategic planning rather than knee-jerk and politically expedient short-term fixes. Because, despite recent increased investment, the Scottish Government is failing to protect health and social care services and the workers who make it function. We are still seeing the closing and cutting of community mental health and health visiting services. So Congress, we must collectively hold the Scottish Government and NHS bosses to account for these issues, and together we can ensure that the state of our health and emergency services are put centre stage in next year's forthcoming Scottish parliamentary elections. I move.
Thank you, Delegate. I now call on the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy to second the amended motion. Thank you, Delegate.
Good morning, Congress. Fiona McKellar, CSP. Congress, NHS Scotland's structural reforms, reform and renewal, operational improvement plans, transformative change, right-sizing the workforce. However these reforms are dealt with, this should not be at the detriment to our terms and conditions of employment. NHS staff should not bear the brunt of poor leadership, lack of financial planning. We are often seen as low-hanging fruit and easy pickings. It's worth remembering NHS Scotland's partnership working and staff governance standards just received critical acclaim. Our staff governance standards are legislated. In fact, the Scottish Government's been heard to say investment in staff is a direct investment in patient care. It's on their website, clear as day. This must include maintaining NHS staff's T's and C's, not eroding them. We already know that effective strategic workforce planning is entirely inadequate in NHS Scotland. These current reform programmes must demonstrate real long-term planning that invests in the workforce, done in partnership with health unions at the initiation stages of change, not as an afterthought. Without the required workforce, none of the Government's wider ambitions for health and social care can be raised and realised. The CSP Scotland's Need More Physios campaign has already highlighted this. We don't need any more short-term, ineffective fixes, no more high-cost locums or outsourcing. Our estate is not fit for purpose. Members can't fit a patient themselves, wheelchairs and carers without moving furniture. They're converting cupboards into offices. We need investment for our patients and staff, our families, our communities. Congress, please support this motion.
Thank you, Delegate. I now call on any supporting or opposing speakers in the debate. Come forward, Francis. Thank you.
President, Congress, Francis Pollock, Unison Scotland, speaking in support of motion 40. First time delegate, first time speaker. While reform within NHS Scotland is long overdue, we can pride ourselves on our trade unions fighting hard for all our members' terms and conditions. Some of these terms and conditions have not been updated for decades and can be achievably improved upon: better maternity pay for parents, lifetime protection and the continuation of no compulsory redundancies for all staff. Funding for NHS Scotland needs to improve drastically if we're ever going to keep our waiting lists down, and provide a diamond service for all patients. All patients deserve to be seen timelessly and treated with the dignity and respect that our staff fight so hard to give due to understaffing, under-training, under pressure and underfunding. The NHS can no longer be run on the goodwill of staff. The Scottish Government have eroded this goodwill. It is time we held Scottish Government's feet to the fire and make them do right by NHS with proper funding for patient care. Our NHS is on its knees, yet the staff work like busy bees. Our NHS needs more money, yet the staff work for merely honey. The Scottish Government has not opened the door as we see our patients needing more. The Scottish Government have lied to you as they fail to give you what you're due. Our NHS is free at point of need and not here for privatisation and greed. Our NHS is worth the plight, so watch our trade unions take up the fight. Fight for the future of NHS Scotland. Please support this amended motion.
Thanks, Francis. Come forward, delegate, come forward. Thank you.
Conference, Drew Gilchrist, North Lanarkshire Trades Council. Conference, the fight against NHS privatisation is one of the most crucial struggles our movement has been tackling for decades now. However, we must be honest, it is one we've stagnated in. I'm glad to see my own union, Unite, has highlighted outsourcing as a core cause of the issues our members and service users find within the health service. Comrades, we need to equip our reps and the labour movement with the tools it needs to understand the industrial, political and class struggle we are facing when opposing outsourcing and privatisation in the NHS. Last year, the North Lanarkshire Trades Council brought to conference a motion that would see the STUC produce a report that names and highlights the individuals and organisations that profit from our community's poor health. Conference, this is a massive piece of work, but it's a crucial and time-sensitive one. For us to enact what motions we're calling for this year, we need the tools on the ground. So I ask that you support the motion.
Thanks, Drew. No other speakers in the debate? That was amended motion 40, the future of NHS Scotland. Please note the General Council recommends support. I'll now take you to the vote. Can I see all those in favour? Please show. Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Amended motion 40, the future of NHS Scotland is carried. I now call on amended motion 41, compassionate leadership within NHS Scotland. I invite the Royal College of Podiatry to move the amended motion. Thank you.
Morning, President, Congress. Gillian Lawrence, the Royal College of Podiatry, first-time delegate, first-time speaker. Congress, I would like to emphasise the urgent need for compassionate leadership across NHS Scotland. Our NHS is the backbone of our nation's health, but it's also a workforce under siege. Staff shortages, increasing patient demands, and limited resources have created a perfect storm, leaving many healthcare workers struggling to cope. Statistics paint a stark picture. In 2023, over 1 in 4 NHS staff in Scotland reported experienced burnout. Vacancy rates in key roles like nursing reached nearly 10%, which is a record high. Meanwhile, sickness absence rates in NHS Scotland climbed to 6.4%, with stress and mental health issues cited as the primary causes. These aren't just numbers, they represent dedicated professionals being pushed to their limits. Compassionate leadership is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Research shows that workplaces led with compassion see higher job satisfaction, lower turnover rates and improved patient outcomes. For example, a 2022 study revealed that healthcare teams with compassionate leadership experienced a 40% reduction in staff stress levels and a significant improvement in care quality metrics. What does compassionate leadership mean in practice? It means managers actively listening to their teams, involving staff in decision-making and creating a culture of mutual support and respect. It means providing opportunities for professional development, ensuring fair workloads and offering mental health resources to staff that need them. We call on the Scottish Government and NHS Scotland to invest in leadership training, programmes rooted in compassion, set measurable targets for its implementation, and ensure resources are allocated to support staff adequately. These actions will not only reduce burnout, but will also help to retain skilled professionals and create an NHS workforce that thrives. This is our moment to champion a transformational approach. Let's ensure that compassionate is the cornerstone of leadership in NHS Scotland for well-being of staff and the care of every patient. Congress, please support this motion.
Thank you, Delegate. I now call on the British Dietetic Association to second the amended motion. Thanks, Simon.
Thanks, President. Congress, Simon Fever from the British Dietetic Association, speaking in support of amended motion 41. You would presume that the NHS in Scotland would be a compassionate place to work. The NHS shows compassion to its patients, but that same compassion is often not reciprocated to its employees. Management's pursuit of waiting list targets, increased patient activity and financial austerity, staff are often regarded as a resource rather than as human beings. We are seen as a number, just as our teacher colleagues said that they were within their workplace. Compassionate leadership is needed at all levels of the NHS, both at a senior executive level as well as in middle management. I've represented too many members lately where managers have shown no compassion to employees, focused on the apparent needs of the service rather than the needs of their staff. But isn't it a sad reflection that we have to teach compassion to our leaders? You would have thought that that would be a given in the NHS, but unfortunately it's not. The BDA would ask you to support the motion specifically. They ask for that compassionate leadership training programme that focuses on delivering a compassionate response to the diverse needs of all its healthcare workers. I ask you to support the motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. I now call on any supporting or opposing speakers in the debate. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Claire Craig from the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy, supporting this motion, and obviously the third healthcare union here today talking about this. I did a quick search for compassionate leadership in healthcare. It came up with multiple resources: a YouTube webinar on compassionate leadership skills for NHS frontline staff, supportive academic papers, supportive policy documents and reports. All of the resources agree it should be embedded in healthcare. There's also several papers proposing and working towards validating tools to measure the dimensions, quality and impact of compassionate leadership. In 2025, NHS England developed the Lotus framework and toolkit to take this a step further towards becoming standard practice. Suffice to say, the value of compassionate leadership in healthcare appears proven. Now it just needs to be embedded in Scotland. That is exactly what this motion calls on the Scottish Government and NHS Scotland to do. Invest, create, implement, measure, analyse and maintain. This is policy implementation in action, and we must enact it now. Please support.
Thank you, colleague. Come forward, colleague.
Thank you, President. Congress, fourth to the podium, another healthcare union. Everyone's stolen everything I was going to say, so I'll keep it brief. Just to say that the scenarios that illustrate why this motion is so important, I've seen personal first-hand experience of. Just in the past 6 months, I've been supporting a member who has been dragged through a consultation process to try and change their working hours. It's not something that they could agree to, they couldn't do it. It took several meetings, the member having to divulge personal information they would much rather have kept to themselves, to the organisation, to satisfy them that they couldn't meet this. And the member ended up frustrated, exasperated and completely fed up and is considering a new employer. So pretty pointless. In another health board, we've got an individual who's raised a grievance because they were intimidated, harassed, borderline assaulted by a senior colleague within the organisation. 5 months on from that grievance being raised, they still haven't interviewed witnesses. So there are situations and scenarios which are occurring in the NHS which you would not anticipate, you would not expect, you wouldn't accept in the private sector, never mind in the managed estate. So please support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Congress, that was amended motion 41, compassionate leadership within the NHS in Scotland. Please note that the General Council recommends support. I will now take you to the vote. Can I see all those in favour? Please show. Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Amended motion 41, compassionate leadership within NHS Scotland, is carried. Congress, I now call on motion 46, social care, time to bargain for better. Can I invite GMB Scotland to move the motion? Thank you.
Good morning. Tamara Beattie, GMB Scotland, moving motion 46. Congress, it has now been 5 years since COVID turned the world upside down. 5 years since care workers were hailed as heroes, clapped for, celebrated, praised by politicians and promised real change. We were told that things would be different, that sacrifices made during the pandemic would never be forgotten, and that the value of care work would finally be recognised, respected and properly rewarded. But what's actually changed? Care workers are still chronically underpaid, still denied proper sick pay, maternity pay and paternity pay, and still trapped in a system where fair pay and conditions are not a right but a battle. Still excluded from national bargaining and still treated like an afterthought by the Scottish Government. The missing millions, the 38 million that was meant to deliver fairness for social care, was snatched away without even a conversation, without even an explanation where it went. A betrayal not just of workers, but of every promise made by the Government. The National Care Service would have been a once-in-a-lifetime generation opportunity to rebuild care from the ground up, and has instead become another expensive mess and is not fit for purpose. A mess that workers have no faith in because, once again, care workers' voices have been ignored. Social care is crumbling. Staff are leaving in droves because they simply cannot survive on poverty wages, and services are being stretched beyond breaking point. Staff are off with mental health issues and no support, and workers have just had enough. The people who rely on care, the elderly, the vulnerable, those with disabilities, they're being failed, and still the governments talk, but they don't act. We don't have any more time for talking. The sector is absolutely broken. Congress, enough is enough. 5 years is too long to wait for promises to be kept. 5 years of empty words, 5 years of workers being left behind and let down. Care workers deserve so much better than this, and they deserve it now. Not in another 5 years, not in another consultation, now. We need full sectorial bargaining to give care workers a real voice and real negotiating power. We need national minimum standards so that no worker is left behind based on who their employer happens to be. We need real investment in our sector, investment that recognises care not as a cost to be cut, but as a foundation to be built on. Because care isn't just a job, it's a lifeline for many of us, and words aren't enough, applause isn't enough. We owe it to every care worker, past, present and future, to turn promises into action. Congress, I urge you to stand with us. Support the workers who have never stopped showing up, even when everything else shut down. Please support this motion. I move.
Thank you, Delegate. I now call on a seconder for the motion.
Mark Thurgood, Unite the Union. Those of you who know me out there might be wondering why someone who works in a warehouse is speaking on a motion on social care. My wife Teresa has been working in care for more than 30 years and the situation is dire. Right? How can it, the motion calls for a minimum wage of £15 an hour. How can it be fair and right that someone like me who works in a warehouse or someone who works in a fast food restaurant gets paid more than someone who provides basic care for some of the most vulnerable people in our society, right? You've all got a poster in front of you, it was laid out this morning when you came in, from Unison. It's enable that Teresa works for. And I know the soul searching that she went through before voting for industrial action, okay? Because of the impact it will have on the people that they look after, okay? But I was blunt and I said to her, on its own, that will make absolutely no difference. All that will happen is the people you look after will suffer. It needs to be sector-wide, which is why you need sectoral bargaining in social care. Because the money at the end of the day, the money comes from the government. Yes, there are rogue private sector employers who take excessive profits out at the expense of the workforce. But most of the organisations in social care about the people that they look after, right? But they really struggle because they don't get enough money from the Scottish Government. Okay, so sectoral bargaining is the key. Okay, right. The Scottish Government try and pass the buck back to local authorities and saying that it's a devolved issue and down to the local authorities to fund it. But the bottom line is the money's coming from the Scottish Government. Okay, so they need to provide the funding. Right. If we want our friends and family members to be properly looked after when they're at their most vulnerable, the care sector must be properly funded. Please support the motion.
Thank you, Delegate. I now call on any supporting or opposing speakers in this debate to come forward. Robin, thank you.
Robin Martin, Unison, sorry a bit loud. Speaking in support, I'm a 22-year-old care worker, one of the Enable strikers, a new delegate and new speaker today. I'd like to begin by just celebrating my fellow colleagues at Enable Scotland who voted yes in our recent ballot for industrial action. This was an unprecedented result in a sector that has not won a strike ballot in over a decade in this country. Solidarity with the Enable strikers! For too long, private care provision has starved the sector that we have built. During COVID, we were clapped for as heroes. Care workers had adequate sick and maternity pay. 5 years later, in 2025, we no longer have the luxury of taking time off to recover for illnesses. This risks not only our own livelihoods, but the livelihoods of those that we support. This regression in care standards has come with the Scottish Government's prioritisation of profit margins. Care providers like the Richmond Fellowship have millions in cash reserves. Meanwhile, their workforce face in-work poverty and oftentimes juggle the workload of 2 people. Turnover rates are so high that care employers are commissioning migrant workers who face some of the most gruelling and inhumane exploitation in the entire sector. The vast majority of care workers are women who so heroically balance their unpaid domestic labour at home with the care of the most vulnerable in our society. Our service users bear the brunt of privatisation and cuts to the service that they are entitled to. Their quality of life is stringent on our advocacy, and I cannot think of a better way we as care workers could advocate for them than collectivising through the union to demand better pay, terms and conditions. Social care is on its knees, it's no secret, but we the workers are on our feet, our boots are on the ground and we're ready to fight and demand what we deserve. We demand that the Scottish Government no longer pander to private profiteering. We demand the immediate reinstalment of the missing millions, and we demand that the Scottish Government adhere to their own fair work promises which they made in 2021. Specifically, these demands lie at the doors of Marie Todd, Kate Forbes and John Swinney. We have proven and will continue to prove that we are willing to do what it takes to get them round the table to engage in collective sectoral bargaining. The livelihoods of our service users and ourselves as the workforce are dependent on it. Congress, this is your opportunity to stand with us as we make our mark on history. Please support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin, for that inspirational speech this morning. Thank you. Any other speakers in the debate? Come forward, colleague.
Congress delegates, Des Lockley from Edinburgh Trade Union Council. I just want to make a few remarks on the social care crisis as it affects Edinburgh. The Edinburgh Integration Joint Board has such a financial dilemma due to insufficient funding, originally from the Scottish Government, now due to the funding that comes from Lothian Health and the City of Edinburgh Council. My own union Unite, I have a branch secretary that represents third sector workers, and the effect of this funding cut is to impose compulsory redundancies on third sector organisations in Edinburgh and to cut important preventative and early intervention services. I'd like to say to Congress, how does it happen that the Scottish Government, which has a policy of no compulsory redundancies and taking any measures possible to avoid redundancies, how is it that a city council, a local authority like Edinburgh City Council which also has a policy of no compulsory redundancies, can, because of insufficient funding from the Scottish Government, impose compulsory redundancies on the third sector and cut vital services. Thanks.
Thank you, Delegate. Any other speakers in the debate? Thank you. That was motion 46, social care time to bargain for better. Please note the General Council recommends support. I will now take you to the vote. Can I see all those in favour? Please show. Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? That motion is carried. Motion 46, social care time for bargaining for better, is carried. Thank you. I now move to motion 47, social care. I invite Glasgow Trades Union Council to move the motion. Jennifer.
Jennifer McCary, Glasgow Trade Union Council, proposing motion 47 on social care. Delegates, 2025 will not be remembered as the year the Scottish Government delivered fair work and social care. Since 2023, pay and conditions have deteriorated, and employers who exploit the workforce face no consequences, and employers trying to deliver fair work are offered no encouragement or incentive. The Fair Work Inquiry in 2019 provides shocking evidence of precarious working conditions, discrimination and low pay. The Feely Report in 2021 agreed that only through the introduction of collective bargaining across private and charitable sectors would we be able to tackle the chronic low pay and the gender undervaluation that care workers experience. But 3 years later, no advances have been made in pay. And the advances that were made in 2021 and 22, which raised care workers' pay above the Scottish living wage for the first time ever, to stand on the first point of Band 2 in the NHS. The Scottish Government retreated on that in 2023 by again making the care workers pay the Scottish living wage. And the right to pay when sick was retreated on also by the Scottish Government when they took away the money for that, which was the missing millions, out of the pockets of care workers in 2023, making not only care workers but residents and clients vulnerable and learning no lessons from COVID. Now care workers face a workforce crisis because they are walking out of the sector because 39 pence an hour extra above the legal minimum wage is simply not enough for the emotional, the physical and the mental labour of care work. A wage predicated on the undervaluation of the work that mainly women do, an inequality delivered by public contract through public funds by public authorities is in fact state-sanctioned gender discrimination. The workforce crisis in care means you're often doing the work of many others, and services are understaffed, are underfunded. Public funding can no longer simply be poured into private care profits, but should be used to make care work pay. Care workers have started to use our movement to fight back. First in 2024 in our city, Glasgow, where the GMB workers in private care homes went on strike to defend their working conditions after TUPE. It was a courageous move by those workers. And now last month, the news that Unison members in Enable Scotland voted for national industrial action, and in doing so have raised expectations of care workers across Scotland that the tools of our movement can be used to improve pay and conditions. If the Scottish Government is not willing to take action, our movement is not only for pay in the pockets of the workforce, but to defend care services also. To deliver fair work in social care, we need fair funding, we need collective bargaining, and we need a care workforce who are organised and ready to fight together to demand that the Scottish Government make care work pay. Delegates, let's not only offer them our support, but all the material solidarity that we can.
Thanks, Jennifer. I now call for a seconder on the motion. Formally, thank you. I now call for any speakers supporting or opposing. That was motion 47, social care. Please note that the General Council recommends support. I'll now take you to the vote. Can I see all those in favour? Please show. Any against? Any abstentions? Motion 47, social care, is carried. Congress, I now call motion 42, facilitating the inclusion of pharmacists in the NHS performers list.
President, Congress, I wasn't sure if the Cuban ambassador was coming on or we were having the next one. I was half asleep there, so sorry. I'm Maurice Hickey from the Pharmacists Defence Association, presenting, facilitating presence of pharmacists on the NHS performers list. I'm sorry about this, it's actually quite a technical thing, so I'm going to shine a light into a sort of dark corner of the NHS where patients potentially get failed. Performers list provides assurance to employers that and patients that practitioners offering primary care services are suitable, eligible and competent to undertake and deliver those services. And it's a statutory responsibility of NHS Scotland and the other NHSs in the UK islands. It can be done digitally, it can be done using National Education Scotland tools, but you have to record that you can undertake the service, that you've done the appropriate education, that you're competent. Very, very straightforward. If you're not on the list, you cannot work in the relevant discipline. The list is public and you can, any one of us can consult it. It's different from regulation, which is very broad. It only applies to the NHS, and it takes, it's a bit of work to actually get on the list. That's so far, that's so good. It applies to doctors, it applies to optometrists, and it applies to dentists, all the primary care services, but it doesn't apply to pharmacists. And unfortunately, as people have been saying earlier, where you've got sort of outsourced work or you've got private contractors, and some of them will take advantage of it. And what happens is that some of the pharmacy contractors will save money because they don't want to pay the higher rates that Scottish pharmacists are paid, and they bring people from other parts of the United Kingdom into Scotland. They haven't done the training, and they can't provide the services. They put pressure on their very poorly paid support staff to actually support these pharmacists and do the work for them. That's illegal, but it does get done. Sometimes they just don't offer the service. It is a bad situation. It would be like me going to work in the south of England. They have their own pharmacy first service. It's different from ours. I can't deliver that. I don't know how. I haven't done the training for England. So if somebody comes from Wales, hasn't done it, can't deliver the service. You see a lot of it down in the borders, for example, but you also see it in the poorer areas where they can't, they find it hard to attract staff to work. You find it in the rural areas, and they'll fly people up from London for holiday cover. So all we're asking is something the government wants, and there's pushback from the contractors body, Community Pharmacy Scotland. They're not keen because it will increase their costs. But if pharmacists are put on the list, then you're not going to get a week or a weekend where patients are denied treatments for something like shingles or urinary tract infections or impetigo, or not get the morning after pill. These are all things that need to be done as soon as possible. It's a crucial step towards a more efficient, integrated and truly patient-centred healthcare system. Congress, I'd ask you to support the motion. I know it's very technical, but help put pharmacists in the performers list. It'll benefit all of you because you're all going to be patients. Some of us are patients now, but everybody will be a patient at some time, and you don't want to be standing there being told, no, I can't help you, you know, because I haven't done the training. Please support the motion.
Thank you. I call for a seconder on the motion. Thank you, colleague.
President, colleagues, Alan Robertson, the Hospital Consultants and Specialists Association, here to second motion 42. As we have heard, we need to ensure that these clinicians are qualified and competent. We need to ensure that all primary care pharmacists meet high standards. We need to reduce the administration burdens and better allocate our resources. Let's recognise pharmacists as integral members of the primary care team. Congress, I second this motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. I now call on any supporting or opposing speakers in the debate. That was motion 42, facilitating the inclusion of pharmacists on the NHS performers list. Please note that the General Council recommends support. I'll now move you to the vote. Can I see all those in favour? Please show. Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Motion 42, facilitating the inclusion of pharmacists on the NHS performer list, is carried. Congress, we are now moving on to a special session on care, which will be chaired by the STUC General Secretary, Ros Foyer. Ros, thank you.
Good morning, Congress. It's an honour to open this vital discussion today as we continue our focus on the care sector. Care is a cornerstone of our society, and the care workforce are a workforce that deserves our unwavering support and advocacy. And like many people in this hall, I know from first-hand experience that social care really, really matters. I lost my mum this Christmas just past, and I lost my dad the one before. And in both cases, I don't actually know what I'd have done if it wasn't for the help and support given to both my parents by the amazing carers working in my mum's case in the local nursing home, and in my dad's case in his own home to support them. And what the last decade has shown me really up close and from a service user's viewpoint is just how much pressure our care services are under and how highly skilled and difficult the work that carers do is. And I think in adult care in particular, it's often care workers who are most closely involved in steering us safely and gently towards the exit sign at the end of our lives. And how they do that has a massive impact on the quality of life for our older citizens in their final years. And I know I could not do the job. I think it takes a special level of humanity and compassion to do that work really, really well. And we all need to value social care workers for doing such a tough job in such a tender manner. So today we wanted to bring you this unique session in some ways, Congress, because in it we'll hear directly from care sector workers, sharing their first-hand experiences from the front lines, stories that too often go unheard but are essential to us understanding the reality of care work in Scotland. And we'll also be joined by Peter Hunter from Unison, who will provide Congress with a really quite an important update on where we are with sectoral bargaining in the care sector, and that's a topic central to our movement's ongoing efforts for justice and fairness for care sector workers. And finally, we'll host a discussion with 3 care representatives from Unison, GMB and Unite. These reps are not only fantastic union leaders in their own workplaces and beyond, but they're also frontline campaigners bringing invaluable insight and passion to our collective struggle. The Fair Care for Scotland campaign has now entered its 3rd year, where care reps have gathered for sessions in Dundee, Edinburgh and Glasgow, and our joint efforts with sister care unions have been transformative. By pooling resources for education, upskilling and campaigning, we've empowered over 80 care reps from different unions to lead change locally and nationally. And the positives are solidarity, shared expertise and amplified voices, and these far outweigh any difficulties that we've encountered in cross-union working. This collaboration is a model for how unions can unite in key sectors and overcome common goals. So before we move into the live discussion congress, let's watch a short video showcasing the collaborative efforts of Unison, GMB and Unite in the care sector to see how those sessions went and hear directly from those involved.
Hi everyone, I'm Tamara BE and I am a GMB representative. I wanted to share a few thoughts about the impact of the Fair Work training and why it's been so important, not just for me personally, but for care workers across Scotland. As someone who comes from the care sector, I've seen firsthand how undervalued and overlooked our work can be. We've been called heroes during the pandemic, but the working conditions haven't always reflected that. The Fair Work training sessions that were put on, I've attended, have been a real turning point in organising. They've helped us understand our rights a lot, building confidence and most importantly connecting with others, especially other unions, facing the same challenges. And it's not just about learning what fair work should look like, but it's about realising that we deserve better and that we have the power to organise and demand it. I've been able to take back what I've learned to my branch, to my workers, to my colleagues, and the care workers that I represent, and it's made a massive difference in how we speak up and challenge poor conditions and push for obviously meaningful change in the workplace. The sessions are more than just training, they're tools for empowerment, especially in sectors like care where workers are often feeling isolated or unheard. And I'd like to say that the fair work can't be achieved in care unless we tackle the root causes of inequality in the sector, like low pay, insecure contracts, lack of recognition for the complex emotional work we do every day. And it's been really great to be able to discuss that with the other unions that attend the fair work. This training has been a brilliant start and I really hope to see it grow in the future, especially for people like me who aren't very confident. I had a lot of learning when it came to the media sessions and doing the role-playing sessions when I went to the STUC Fair Work event in Glasgow. It's been really beneficial. So I just wanted to pop on a video and say thank you so much for the sessions that were put on, and I really hope that they do continue, because I really think for people like me, especially because I'm neurodivergent, I found these really useful to attend and in helping building my confidence.
Hi there, my name's Anthony Moxey. I'm a Unite rep. At this present time, the government's not been listening to our voices. Our employers are not listening to our voices. As a union, we need to work together in harmony. All the unions, Unite, Unison and GMB, working in unison together and fighting for a better future for all Scottish care workers.
Hi, my name's Kim and I've worked for Enable Scotland for the last 8 years. I have been a Unison steward for the last 6 months. In the 8 years I've worked with Enable, I've seen my workload increase, but something that's not is the pay to reflect that. Because of the pay, there's a shortage of staff, people are not willing to come on for the amount of work that we're doing. We need to get more pay to get more staff in, and it's becoming a safety issue.
Hello everyone, my name is Paulo. I work for Cargo in Dundee. I joined Cargo for about 2 years. I enjoy the job, but I think we need better pay, better conditions. We need to speak out with the government, local authorities. We need to also engage with the community, because we are very essential in the society nowadays, but we need to be less invisible. That's why I'm here this morning.
Hi, I'm Jan. I'm with Unite the Union. I've enjoyed today's session. I've learned all about, where the actual power is, even although we think it's with the bosses and the employers and the government, it's actually with us. So we need to unite together to make sure our voices are heard.
I'm Kirsten, a care worker from Glasgow. I've had an excellent day today. I've learned loads about the structures behind inequality in social care, and I would recommend an STUC, educational day out to everybody.
Hi, my name is Fable. I'm glad to be here today because saying that all the trade unions can actually come together to make the change is very important. So every health and social care worker out there, so we all need to get involved, and I'm happy the trade unions are working together.
Hi, I'm Liz. I'm from Unite, and I'm here today because social care workers have been undervalued and underpaid for far too long, and it's really good to get together with other people who work in the sector and to really discuss the campaign that's already happening between the three unions, and it's really great to hear that they're working together.
I'm Laura. I'm in Unite the Union. I work at Cargon, which is a company that provides care. I help people with disabilities, mental health problems. I've been in this job for 4 years, and I'm fed up of being seen as a low-skilled worker when the job takes a lot of care and time to learn how to do properly. So I'm fighting for better conditions.
When do we want it now? What do we want? Fair pay. When do we want it now?
So I'm sure you'll agree, Congress, that there's some really inspiring work taking place here. And I want to take a moment to thank our STUC Fair Work in Action project worker, Denise Christie, for her tireless work in supporting this campaign. As well as thanking all three unions for getting involved and really, signing up and being a part of this. Sectoral bargaining has been mentioned, and it has proven to be the most effective tool for securing pay increases and better conditions, and it was a key recommendation of that Fair Work Convention inquiry into social care, and that need to introduce it right across the sector. And as highlighted in the Convention's report, sectoral bargaining is not only possible now, but it's a key pillar of fair work. It can drive up wages, it can improve conditions without waiting for new legislation. There is no need to wait. So I would now, on that note, like to welcome Peter Hunter, the Regional Manager at Unison. Peter's been the joint lead for the care unions in the campaign to establish sectoral bargaining within the care sector, and he's going to share his insights on both the challenges we face and the opportunities that sectoral bargaining presents. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Ros, and thank you, Congress, Peter Hunter, Unison and General Counsel. Just to echo briefly everything you've said about the uniqueness of this moment, the uniqueness of the General Counsel's support for the work that Denise and colleagues within the Secretariat are doing, but uniqueness also in the process that we've reached so far for sectoral bargaining and fair work in care, and the role for all of us in the movement to deliver what comes next. I want to start by picking up on something that Robin Martin said in her speech and that Ros said in the introductory remarks. Early in the panic of the pandemic and COVID, Unison issued something that I will always remember, a public message. To those workers who leave their loved ones to care for ours, thank you. Just to say that again. To those workers who leave their loved ones to care for ours, thank you. And that needs to be unpacked. We need to remember the emotion, the anxiety of that moment, but also the politics and the economics of that moment. And how do we use the legacy of lockdown to address the problems which left those workers so exposed? Because we are the loved ones who those workers left their own families to care for. As Ross has said, and I am in that position as well. And some of the workers who left their loved ones to care for ours never went back. And I know I was not the only one yesterday, Workers' Memorial Day, who had those dead health and social care workers in my mind as we remembered the wider group of workers who left their families to go to work and never went back. And it must be our purpose and the legacy of all of that sacrifice to deliver what we are doing now. The GMB said at that time, crucially, what comes after the applause? Because yes, we are the grateful loved ones who received that care, and some of those workers did not come back. But those who did and stay in care are here today and making a pitch through the motions and through this conversation, a pitch to us for our support. Because there is a score to settle, there is a fight to fight, and from that Unison quote about loved ones and care, it is clear that emotionally as well as politically and economically, your fight is our fight. So when the Enable workers, for example, take their strike action to secure part of the promise that was made to them during the pandemic, their fight is your fight. It is our fight as a movement, and we must be there in practical terms and in numbers to secure that victory as part of the step towards sectoral bargaining. And there will be legally enforceable minimum pay and conditions in social care. That is guaranteed now by the Employment Rights Bill, but also by the Scottish Government's commitment. But we know as a movement that the law is not the worker's friend. And there is a massive difference, for example, between the national minimum wage from 1999, which is a legally enforceable minimum that's handed down from London, which has not changed low pay on the ground. There's a difference between that and the sectoral bargaining that our comrades in social care are building, and it is the bargaining element. This is not a peer review, and it cannot be a peer review. As Tamara said, and as Robin has said, this has to be based on the organising power within social care workplaces, bringing demands to the sectoral bargaining table so that the pay and conditions that we win are the justice that the workers demand, that the justice the workers deserve, and the promise that we made when they left their loved ones to look after ours. That is the demand from the workforce. That is the task for us, and that's the conversation that I'm looking forward to hearing more detail about today. Congress, thank you.
Thanks very much, Peter, for that really valuable update on where we're at. Now, I'm pleased to introduce the real experts in this session, our panel of frontline care reps who bring a wealth of experience and insight from across the sector. Can you please welcome Tamara Beattie from GMB, Robin Martin from Unison, and Danny Cullen from Unite. Thank you, all of you, for joining us today and participating in the session. I'm going to put 3 questions and I'm going to get each of you in turn to answer each of the 3 questions to help us just get a better understanding of the current situation. So the first question that I wanted to ask is, what do you think the main issues within the care sector that workers in your union are experiencing are? You know, like what key things really need to change in the sector from your viewpoint? So I'm going to start with Tamara and then I'll move on.
Well, how long you got for a start? How long you got? We've got a lot of issues in care, but I'll just stick to the main ones. Obviously, low pay is a massive issue in care. You've got a workforce that's predominantly women who are struggling to pay the costs of childcare, struggling to live on a daily basis with the wages that they're on. They're having to choose between going full-time, part-time and leaving the sector because they can't basically afford the cost of childcare to keep working unless they have family support, which isn't always the case for everyone. Then you've got sick pay. A lot of private care homes, I can only speak from my experience in private care, but we don't get paid sick pay. So we're having to choose whether we're going into work sick and then making other people contagious, you know, making other people ill, or having to lose out on wages, which obviously in this day and age you can't afford. Then you've got the poor terms and conditions. We've got unsafe staffing levels. Workers are expected to do more for less every day, and it's got worse since COVID, like I'm sure that you'll all agree. There's just so much expectation for care staff, so they're just so overworked and undervalued. There's no real care progression or recognition for the skilled work that we do, and it's treated just like care work. And to be honest, I think that we need to kind of change the narrative of that as unions, that it's not just care work, and we do skilled work, and it is important what we do. I think that obviously we could change all this by setting a minimum pay of £15 an hour and getting sectorial bargaining in place so that national standards are set across the board. And I just think that after everything that we went through during COVID, that the expectation is that we need action now and not more empty promises. So.
Quite right. Quite right, Tamara. Can I come to you, Robin? What's your view on that question?
Is this on? Oh, yeah. Oops. Tamara really summarised that very well. Honestly, like you said, you'd need, honestly, all the time in the world to sit and actually try and unpack the different and varying levels of exploitation that are happening at the minute. Something that isn't really spoke about as much, and I think it's because we can't really know the sort of extent of it. And I'm going to talk about migrant workers a wee bit here. As I kind of spoke about in my speech, the very high turnover rate in social care, which is the result of just workers for so long, and especially since COVID, just feeling so undermined and undervalued, despite loving their job and having that compassion and the core values that you need to be a carer. They feel very much pushed out of it. But as a response, instead of adapting and changing the sector to suit the service user and the worker, they're making the sector far more precarious and commissioning in migrant workers who, you know, some of the contracts, it's absolutely the most inhumane exploitation that I think I've ever encountered in my life. The level you know, and these workers are actually so afraid to speak about their exploitation and the actual truth behind what's going on. You know, certain situations, you know, it's incredibly precarious, incredibly hard to navigate. So, in terms of things that we could do, you know, speak to migrant workers that you know, because, see, to be honest, this is an issue that goes beyond just care. Where you see precarious contracts, you will see migrant workers in that workforce. It's about talking to them, it's about getting together, and it's about amplifying their voices and making them feel part of a collective. Yep. Because that's where they become untouchable, where they're part of a collective, and we need to stand shoulder to shoulder with them in that fight. Thanks.
Thanks, Robin. And Danny?
Yeah, like they said, everybody's already said what I really could have said there, but yeah, the main issues are really pay, terms and conditions, workers being well, not being forced, but having to work exorbitant hours every month just to live. We've got reports of workers, especially during the winter, where it's either you heat or you eat. People unable to actually pay for public transport to get to work. They're having to walk miles to actually just get there. It's completely unacceptable. Workers are getting that pressure from their managers constantly because workers are leaving in droves. So shifts are having to be picked up by other people having to do 200 plus hours every month just to survive. And when that's not happening, that's when we start to get the agency workers in. And that is just weakening social care as a whole, because we've got these agencies out there providing staff at a much higher rate, and they pay them a lot more than what we would pay our own staff. So we then get workers leaving to go and work for that agency. It's completely unacceptable.
Vicious circle, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing lots of, really key issues there around the low pay. The sick pay is a key lesson that they just didn't learn from the pandemic, and we've raised that a lot in the inquiries, the evidence that we've been given on the COVID inquiry. And what I'm hearing as well is just that need to collectivise if we're going to push back on some of these issues, and the real need to reach out to migrant workers and those tied contracts being so problematic. Just moving on, I just want to know, how you found the joint campaigning, the upskilling, the fair work training sessions that the STUC is providing and that you're undertaking with the sister care unions. Do you think that that's going to help you, mount that fight back? And what sort of feedback are you getting from your reps and your members that have been participating in these events? I'll maybe start with yourself, Robin, this time.
So the members have really, really enjoyed it. I think that's one of the ways that we can amplify the voices of migrant workers through that kind of joint union strategy. And I can draw an example. Unison had a care workers conference, which was the first of its kind, seriously trailblazing. And migrant workers, it was honestly one of the most powerful things I've ever seen. All these migrant workers in the same room, all talking about the same issues that they've got with each other, and empowering and emboldening each other to actually get involved with this, educating us as well, people who aren't migrant workers. And then we can also draw parallels in between where we're the same, where things are actually a hell of a lot more precarious for migrant workers. I was going to say as well, and another example was what was it called again? I've drawn a blank here. The sectoral bargaining school, which was phenomenal. I personally couldn't, I was really ill, but I've spoke to members and they've all told me that it was just absolutely incredible, just getting together and not just talking about what the problems are, but coming up with actual real sustainable solutions through sectoral bargaining, and having everybody on board with that was absolutely incredible to see. I've seen loads of videos, and like I said, members came back to our Stewards Committee at Enable. Honestly, the reviews were absolutely brilliant. So these are really, really important in terms of forming a joint union strategy, and that is a really important component. Collective sectoral bargaining, it can't just come from one union, it has to come from all unions. We all have to be united in this.
Thanks, Robin. Danny, what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, same again. Myself, I've not managed to be on any of the learning yet, unfortunately, but some of my colleagues, I saw some of my fellow reps up there on the video, and what I'm hearing is that, yeah, it was absolutely incredible, being on the training, and like you're saying, we need to have that collective. It can't just be the one union that's pushing this forward. We need to all be together. I can't believe I'm going to say it, but better together. We need to be better together. We need to push this forward, because it's the only way that we're going to get this done. It's the only way. I mean, £15 an hour, we campaigned for that with Unite, and for the sectorial bargaining. We went to Holyrood to hand that in. Sorry, not Holyrood, in Edinburgh, someplace, can't remember. They didn't even open the door. They didn't even open the front door. They asked us to go and take it round the back. It was absolutely demoralising, absolutely demoralising. It just a huge kick in the teeth. No recognition there at all from Holyrood. And then when we were in Holyrood, speaking to people. We did not get one SNP, MSP near us. They all told us they had something else to do. No one else came near us. We even had Douglas Ross in the room. It was absolutely sickening. So it can't just be the one union. We need to all be together. We all need this for the sectorial bargaining to work. This is what we need. We need everybody here and all yous.
Thanks, Danny. And Tamara, what's your thoughts on the work that's been taking place?
Pretty much echoing what the guys have said. The joint campaigning and training sessions have been quite good. They've been brilliant to have all the three unions come together. And I think that it's important that we do that because we realise that actually the issues that we've got aren't just one union. We've all got the same issues, which means that we can campaign and come up with solutions on where we go next, because at the end of the day, it's us against them, and to make real change, we need a collective voice. And the feedbacks from our reps have been really positive. Like, they felt more confident and connected going into their workplaces, and I think we've kind of found that we've got a lot more activists from them come into these sessions because they get all riled up after they've been to the Fair Work and that they're ready to fight the good fight, aren't they? So yeah, it's been really, really good, and it's definitely made me more confident to do public speaking because I have never enjoyed doing that. So going to courses like this really helps people that aren't that confident. So
I think you're all excellent public speakers, by the way. And just moving on to the last question, I'll come to you first, Danny, if that's okay. How important is it that care sector workers right across the sector can get that collective bargaining and negotiation and agree their own pay terms and conditions rather than having those sort of things imposed?
I kind of covered it earlier, is we all do need to be together, but across the sector, the terms and conditions are so different. So in the private sector, like they're saying, the sick pay is pretty much non-existent. So yeah, we need everybody sort of a lot of employers out there, they offer exploitative contracts. That's the big thing, and we need to combat that. That's why we need everybody together, all the unions. We need that sectoral bargaining for care workers because they don't have a voice. We need to be that voice, and we need to empower them to raise their own voices. I think that's, yeah, sorry, I've went a bit blank there. Sorry.
Thanks, Danny. I'll come to you next, Tamara, and then I'll go to Robin.
So I think it's absolutely crucial that workers get to negotiate and agree their own pay terms and conditions. I think when stuff like pay is imposed on the workers, that they're treated like they're invisible. So it's really important that they're included in these conversations, and we shouldn't just be grateful for getting the bare minimum. And if care workers can negotiate their own futures, then we could kind of stop the race to the bottom and stop employers and governments from driving down standards and cutting up costs. Like obviously we spoke about how much care is the backbone of the society, and the people providing it deserve to have power over the decisions that actually affect their lives. So, yeah.
No, absolutely. And Robin?
I would go so far as to say, just due to the state of social care and the crisis that it's in, that we just simply cannot trust care providers any longer to not put profit before care provision, high quality care provision at that. It has to be a bottom-up structure. It has to be the workers telling the employers, you know, what's best for us and for our service users, because nobody knows them and nobody knows our workforce better than we do. So it has to be that way, and also it's, you know, the power that you feel as a collective is just absolutely unparalleled. And I'm just speaking on behalf of myself anyway. Being with Enable Scotland and the fact that we are going on strike after, you know, we promised last year if the Scottish Government didn't take any action that we would be in 2025, and look where we are. The workforce come through on our promises. It's time the Scottish Government did the same, is what I'm going to say.
Well, you've heard it from them. I would like to thank Tamara, Danny and Robin for sharing your experiences and insights with us today. Your voices really are at the heart of our movement, and your leadership is really, really inspirational, and I know that the organising work that we're all doing together is going to make sure that we build those care workers into a force big enough and loud enough, not just to get the doors shut in our faces, but to start kicking down those doors and demanding the sort of pay and conditions and pay bargaining that care workers deserve. So let's continue building that united front. Let's get the change we need. Thank you, Congress, and back over to our President. Thank you, all of you.
Thanks very much, Congress. That was a truly outstanding session. As you've just heard, the campaigning in the care sector is a daily battle, no more so than the workers in Enable who have voted overwhelmingly for industrial action, which we've heard already today. We are now going to show a short video in which you can hear their voices.
Since the pandemic and long before, there has been a lot of talk about a crisis in social care.
We were hailed as heroes during the COVID pandemic.
We don't get paid enough as social care workers.
We're doing so much extra work just to get a reasonable life.
And very often these days, I'm having to do the work of 2 people for half the pay.
We, as carers, for doing a job that is as difficult as our job is, deserve much, much more than what the government and Enable are willing to give us.
After years of inaction and broken promises, it is us, social care workers, who will take action to protect the people we care for.
Where we believe that we can raise the pressure is by taking action, by voting yes for strike and walking out to raise pressure on the Scottish Government to provide that funding.
For the people we support and for the members of Unison and for everybody else that works in the care sector, we need to strike.
Vote yes for strike!
Workers at Enable have voted to strike for the first time in the organisation's history.
And if the Scottish Government fails to take action and deliver sectoral bargaining in 2024, then we the workers will be planning industrial action across the country and across our unions in 2025.
Our fight is the fight of every worker in this economy. Join us on the 12th of June as we march on Holyrood to demand an urgent injection of money to fund fair pay for care workers.
We demand that the Scottish Government make care work pay.
Thank you, Congress. And you'll have seen that the tellers have distributed solidarity posters. I now invite you to hold up those posters and show your support and solidarity for a photograph to send to our colleagues taking action and Enable. Thank you, Congress. Congress, we are now going to stop for our lunch break. Again, I encourage you to visit the Congress exhibition, attend the fringe events that are taking place this afternoon. There will be a bucket collection for fans supporting food banks as you leave the hall. Congress, this morning we listened to the debates on the future of Dundee. Can you bear with me just 1 second? There will be a rally outside for workers who are facing redundancy. It will take place outside in the city square now, and I encourage you all to show your solidarity and support those workers. Please ensure that you are back in the hall prompt at 2 p.m. We will open this afternoon's session with a keynote address from the General Secretary. So before we continue with Section 6 of the agenda, public services, have a great lunch break, colleagues. Thank you.